slide you see before you. It was 3 years ago, just this time of year, when I was here, and my wife, in a random act of kindness, visited the Richmond, Virginia Humane Society and extracted that cat, who was the #1 death row candidate, and another, and named her CALI. Not because of the convention, but more because of her coat. Because after all, if the cat had been named after the convention, would have named her John Mayer. Okay, it's interesting, those of you who haven't presented here before, the things that go on in the background as presentations are being developed. And this was the title that you see in your program notes, 30 Pitfalls to Avoid with Laptops. And our original proposal,
the one we prefer,
at least then, was mandatory laptops. Now that you're doing it, here's how we're doing it, which sounded, as more I thought about it, a little bit arrogant.
But what's the matter with that?
So one that kind of comes between the two and is probably most accurate. Which is a big part of our story today.
Yeah, we are now going into the fifth year of mandatory laptops at the University of Richmond Law School. And what we're going to present here today are a condensed version of only 30 of the problems we've had over the past 5 years and what we've learned from them. And pitfall number 1. Not selling the non-academic units on the program. When we started, our dean thought it was really important to sell the faculty on how important this program was. And yeah, you have to sell the faculty. But our problem was he never bothered, and no one ever bothered to sell people like the admissions director, people like the director of career services on how important the program was. Like we said, we're in our 5th year of the program, and this year, the materials being printed for the upcoming year will be the first time the mandatory laptop program is being mentioned in our admissions materials. Because our admissions director hates this program. She keeps hoping that someone's going to wake up one day and say, oh, let's not do that anymore. Because she's terrified of what it's going to do to her numbers. Are people going to refuse to come to our school because they have to buy a computer? And there is no evidence to show that our yield is down at all. As a matter of fact, our applications are matching or above the national levels, but she hates the program and goes out of her way not to talk about it. So pitfall number 1 is definitely making sure that everyone in the building is on board on your program.
Okay, pitfall number 2 kind of goes to a little bit of the structure of our program, some of which I discuss, I think, further in, but put quickly, most of the students who enter the University of Richmond Law School opt to purchase a more or less turnkey system, which is the result of a deal that we've worked out with a local vendor. This saves them the hassle of selecting hardware, evaluating it. Our having a program such as that relieves us of a lot of the individual setup burdens. But we also do have an option 2 sort of program designed mainly for students who already own their laptop or have other wants. There might be something about our program they don't like. They might want to save money, or they might want a little bit more or different machine, or as I say, they may already have one. And we've discovered, and what they do is they have to send those to us in July if they're going with an option 2 for us to configure, and they don't get it back until school starts. And early on, we were pretty loosey-goosey about software versions and more importantly about what Ethernet adapter, because everybody has a CAROL connection where we are. Everybody hooks in and that's the whole point. And so we just told them get some kind of a 10-base-T Ethernet adapter, and we did that back in the old parallel port before Windows 95 days as well. And then we gave ourselves a living nightmare trying to figure out how some of these things would configure. It made the option 2 setups feverishly difficult. In the last couple of years, we've begun to standardize on peripherals and the like, and it creates a much more predictable atmosphere.
Yeah, unless you have unlimited staff and unlimited time to work on these problems, you really need to have very standard configurations for your hardware and your software. And also, one of the reasons why we do take such a hard line nowadays is the underlying philosophy that Joe Harbaugh, the dean who introduced this program at Richmond, is that this computer is vitally important to every student in their work. And every student must have a working computer in their hands by the first day of class. And so you can't have a student whose computer is so hard to set up that it's like 2, 3, 4 weeks into class before they're using their computer.
Okay, one of the tricky issues, I have to sort of switch into a slightly different, more theatrical mode. As we discussed pitfall number 3, a printer issue. In this case, no sheet feed in the printer. Joyce, the issue of whether to include a sheet feeder with the printer begs the question of whether a printer should be included in the package at all. And this, in turn, begs the overarching question, are printers merely annoying, or are they inherently evil? My vote goes with the latter. The law student's addiction to the printer, or rather to the printed page, is the stuff of legends, a source of unceasing complaint, and a major source of the war between the haves, that is, those who can afford those ink cartridges, and the have-nots, those who cannot. I say let them read off their screens. Why else do they call them notebooks? The era of printers, along with their accomplices in culpability, paper and ink, must end. The money saved would be better spent on beer.
Oh, you ignorant slut. We rehearsed that line. Printers must be included because students do print off everything. Students have the major goal during their career in law school to print their own personal copy of the National Reporter System. If they don't have their own printers, they will be using our printers, and they will be using our paper and our toner. In our lab, we opened a new lab in, when was that? August of 96.
Right.
We opened up a refurbished lab in August of 96. By January of 97, we had run 600,000 pages of paper through 4 separate printers. We go through, I would say with 4 printers, we go through a dozen toner cartridges a month. This has got to stop. We can't supply printing. I mean, everyone in this audience, we all came back in the days of buying typewriters. That was the big graduation present when you graduated from high school, right? Everyone got a typewriter if you're going to college. I don't remember my college buying me typing paper. I don't remember my college buying me typing ribbons or carbon paper or anything like that. Why are we expected to supply toner cartridges and paper? Yes? We have 460 students. Yes. We will pretty soon. Right now, printing is promiscuous. People print 200 pages and they abandon it. Our students who work in the evening, one of their jobs is to clean up the lab, and they are constantly throwing away abandoned print jobs.
By the way, it was my honor to meet the fellow this afternoon who is P. Counter.
Oh, right. May I shake your hand?
Shake the hand of the hand.
Shake the hand of the man who wrote P. Counter.
Including. We don't have high-speed printers.
We do not have high-speed printers for our students. They just print everything. They download everything off the network. Yeah.
I have a question about our bank tomorrow in the session on
Yes.
What is the tuition?
Our tuition is about $20,000 a year.
And that includes the laptop.
No. The laptop adds about $3,000 to the first year tuition. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I don't see how the shipping commission is that
one of the things we're asked to keep the package as inexpensive as possible, which is something coming up. But now our tuition, it's between $18,000 and $20,000 for next year. Yeah, we're very pricey.
Was never an issue.
It was never an issue. I mean, the dean decided we were going to do it. He sold them on it, and yes, we're going to do this. Yeah.
Did it affect your numbers?
No. No.
Okay, so let's see.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're going to do printers,
and you should.
Arguably, there should. You have to do them as well as you can within your tight budget. And early on, this is probably moot nowadays, but our first year or even two, I believe it's just the first year, we did the Canon BJ without a sheet feeder, and
we wanted to save $50.
Viciously hated. So you have to. It's just sort of representative of having a printer that will at least be functional.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, carrying cases.
Yeah. Our package includes a carrying case, and the wrong size means any size you pick. The first year, we had these real cute little teeny tiny carrying cases which just fit the computer. And everybody hated them because, hey, you mean I've got to carry this carrying case along with my backpack and all my books, and whine. So the next year, we had a big carrying case, and you can't see the bottom. So in the big carrying case, ooh, look how nice this big carrying case is. I can put all my books in here. And so they shove all their books in with their computer, and they damage the computer.
Okay, yeah, this is another one, kind of a late addition that we nearly forgot. But there are a bunch of different ways in which one can lose the use of their PC, damage and theft. And there are insurance alternatives out there that are really a good idea for students in this kind of a setting to have in case of such loss. There are dedicated PC insurance policies, as well as what might be available in a homeowner's or renter's insurance, or possibly the comprehensive rider on your car insurance. But it's a good idea to remind students about the availability and good sense of getting insurance, because we've had a number of theft and damage kinds of situations occurring both in and outside of the school, and we've been pretty fortunate in that most of what has been reported to us were also situations in which the students were indeed insured.
So one of the things you have to remember is that many of your students, especially ours, they're very young. Now, they're 21, 22 years old, and they may never have purchased insurance themselves ever. And the idea of having insurance for one of their possessions is a pretty foreign concept to them. It's something that needs brought to their attention. Oh, yeah.
Okay, now we're getting into some of the vendor kinds of issues. And one of the things that we do, whether it's the option one sort of turnkey system, or when we create standards for what students bring of their own, either way we insist that there be some kind of service coverage that lasts for 3 years. And that's not just the magic number, obviously, that has to do with how long they're under our roof. And how the service policy works really merits a good close look. We learned this in the first couple years when the option one machine was an AT&T laptop, until they mercifully went out of the PC business. The send-in policy that AT&T had on their boxes entailed that the owner pay the shipping charges. There was none of this, we'll UPS you a box and you call UPS and UPS it back on our nickel and everything like that. And this was massively unpopular. So this is more representative of a bunch of different issues in the service picture on the PC that you need to look at closely. Now, with IBM, EasyServe, our dealer is able to perform service during the first year of regular warranty. In years 2 and 3, a UPS paid service to Atlanta that has really operated quite well takes effect for the duration.
It doesn't add all that much cost to the package, and the students really like it. It's something that they do not mind paying for. When we didn't do this, students were horrified to discover they were expected to pony up sometimes as much as $60 just to get their computer to the warranty service. And so having the prepaid warranty service really is a good idea. Yeah.
The relationships that are involved in dealing with vendors can be kind of complicated because you have the student who is, of course, the purchaser of record. We who are in the position of giving the student certain kinds of support. The seller, the vendor, who's making the money on the deal and doing all the things that sellers do, and the manufacturer. Elsewhere, I think I talked about, we've always used local vendors, which generally I would have thought would have been the best way to approach things, but talking to Billy Joe, it looks like they're going to be doing real well dealing with Dell. But at any rate, in the vendor negotiations, you'll probably have a salesperson who is handling the account, who is your main conduit of information about price, features, possibly your middle person with service issues and the like. And in talking to these people, sometimes you have to remember that they are beholden to, their job is to make commission. And certain times when things are happening involving like a precipitous price drop in the months between the time the deal is closed and the PC ship, and you want to find out whether they can do anything to fill the gap as far as lowering the price or providing some extra service. Your salesperson is going to be not the one maybe interested in offering anything that might tip into a growing commission. And it's often a good idea then to talk to somebody higher up in the company than the person to make deals like that. Let's see where we go. Is that me or you?
I can do this one. Like we said before, as we brought it up, Linda brought this up. Our tuition is high. We are a private school. We are a very expensive private school. Our tuition is, I'm not quite sure, it's between $18,000 and $20,000. I think it's $20,000 a year. The laptop package is an add-on to the first year tuition. We have one demand placed on us, and that's that we don't go top of the line, really, really expensive. I mean, we could go out there and pick a $4,000 laptop, and that's just the computer. But we don't do that. What we really need to do, what we feel is really the best way to sell this program, is to try to get the best bang for our buck. Get a good computer, not a real cheapy computer. Don't get a cheap computer, but get the best computer you can in a set price range. We target $3,000 as the price range for our package every year. And we don't like to go more than $200 to $300 over that figure. And for the last 2 years in a row, we've come in right at $32.26. So we try to get a good computer. We don't want to get something that's absolutely cheesy cheap that's going to be constantly breaking, because then you have the problem with a really cheap laptop. It's constantly going in for repairs. Yeah.
Did you run that figure?
Pretty much it was something we pulled out of the air. We just looked at what's available price-wise, and we said, okay, this is something that people can live with.
5 years ago, when we did the first one, we had much fewer alternatives, both in terms of the number of different models that were brands and models available, and a number of vendors who would deal with our, frankly, rather eccentric two disbursement payment plans, since that's how student loans are dispersed. And so the AT&T model from 1993 set the tone quite a bit, and we've stayed within going into year 5 within a couple $100. And as an illustration, we've been going with ThinkPads now for this being the 3rd year, and the same approximate money 3 years ago bought a P70 with a, or not a P70, I'm sorry, a Cyrix 586 kind of machine.
Yeah.
Last year bought a Pentium 166 or 133, and this year is buying a Pentium 233 MNX. And if we'd really wanted to dun the students and come up with a pricey package, it might have been a Pentium 2 with an active matrix screen, and with a price that starts with a 5.
Okay.
The only question would be is if the 133 was good enough for most students, why wouldn't it be good enough for these students?
You gotta find
Not being
one.
made anymore. I mean, that model is no longer available. Wait, we had a question right here.
Except maybe from Valley America.
We've been debating that, and it's something that we're currently looking at, but my feeling is that a computer is pretty much like, a car or some other appliance. You buy one, you use it for a few years, and then you just have to bite the bullet and get a new one. I mean, I think we all have old computers sitting around the house. I've got an old laptop, a 2 floppy drive one. We've got lots of old computers around the library. It's just a fact of life. Computer technology changes. At the end of 3 years, we're only guaranteeing them a computer that's good enough to get them through law school. We do not represent that they're going to be able to use this thing for the rest of their legal career.
Which they have a lot of trouble with at times, admittedly.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and we talked about this before. I can go through this, and that is, again, focusing on the fact that between the time you're negotiating this deal, which, by the way, has got to be February or March or even maybe April of this winter and spring before the school year, to make all your plans and get all your notifications out. And from March to late August is an ocean of time, mixed metaphor, for things to happen in the PC industry, new models to come out, product lines to change, and prices to drop. And every year this has occurred, and sometimes it's been a big deal, and other times it hasn't been such a big deal in terms of the number of dollars involved. But even in our very first year, we were shipping a AT&T 486 monochrome machine that became obsolete, or at least was replaced in the line, but we were still sort of committed to the model, and so they became available at bargain basement prices. And we sort of saved our bacon by going to the vendor and saying, we're getting phone calls on this, what can you do for us? And although they weren't in a position, or they weren't willing to put themselves in a position of upgrading the model, and we weren't in a position financial aid-wise to change the price, we were able to get a RAM upgrade, which was really fortunate because we were thinking in terms of a 4 megabyte machine. And that gave us 8 and pretty much saved the program inadvertently.
Yeah, wait, before that. Right now I want to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit about the timing, because Paul alluded to it, because you're going to have prices falling. We're talking about having to do all this so much in advance. One of the things that happens a lot, and one of the reasons why Paul and I wanted to come here and do this program, is we get a lot of phone calls in April from people calling up and saying, we're going to institute a laptop program next fall. What do we need to do? Actually, we tell them, well, you start talking about doing it for the fall of the following year, because you have to have a lot of lead time, you have to have a lot of contact time with students. We started talking about this program a full year before we did anything. And actually, the first contact our students get from us is in December, the year before they're admitted. They get a letter welcoming them. They've been accepted to our law school. These are the early admission people. And the letters go up beginning in December because we have rolling admissions at our school saying, congratulations, you've been admitted. We're really happy you're going to be coming. And this letter comes from the director of the law library because the law library is in charge of the technology program. And it says, you know, we do have a mandatory laptop program. Here's everything that's going to happen. You will be getting a letter from us in March describing what your options are. So you really have to have your decisions made pretty much in advance as to what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be handling things. Because one of the things we have discovered is that you cannot surprise students. And one of the things people always ask about is, well, why do you pick up your computer so early? Why don't you wait until April or May or June before you finalize what computer you're going to use for your option 1? And that is driven by the financial aid people. We have to get the price of our package to them by March 1 because that is the day they start calculating loan packages for the students coming in for the next year. We just discovered this year, I don't know if it's just we never asked or we just assumed that they were pretty inflexible, but it turns out we really do have a window of opportunity for them to recalculate the package, but it's not that big. If we can let them know by May 1st of a drop in prices, they can recalculate the aid packages, but only then if they really have to. They don't want to. But students are accepted beginning in December, and aid package award letters, financial aid award package letters, they start going out mid-March. And since the program is required, the price of the laptop is folded into tuition, and that's part of the money they can borrow. They're allowed to borrow an extra, when they're first years, they're allowed to borrow an extra $3,226 to pay for this computer. Okay.
Okay, we go through this one kind of quickly because here again we've alluded to it before, is that we're kind of in the middle of a relationship that is complex, and at certain times we've stayed with the same vendor through the life of our program for a bunch of reasons. And earlier in the time when we were using them, they were a lot less forthcoming with good service and good advocacy for the customer in dealing with the vendor, and which we've had to deal to a certain degree with the vendor and kind of say, well, do you want our business? At the same time, it's kind of a sticky situation at times when there is dissatisfaction between customer and vendor, and at times we become accused of being indeed the seller.
Yes.
And it's important in those times to remind students that indeed, though you're here to help in whatever way possible, you are not the seller. I guess that's really all there is there.
Yes, just remember, no good deed goes unpunished. This is part of the bidding process. When we do the request for bids goes out at the end of January. And the vendors have until middle of February to return their bids to us. One of the things we have learned is that you have to insist that they not give you a package price. If you look, one of our handouts was option 1. If you look at that handout for option 1, on the second page of it, it lists everything that the student will get, the advantages of option 1. Under option 1, blah, 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 blah. And it tells you everything you're going to get, because you don't just get a computer. That's the thing that we emphasize over and over to students. You're not just getting a computer. You're getting a computer. You're getting software. You're getting a carrying case. You're getting a printer. You're getting this. You're getting that. You're getting blah, blah, blah. Make sure the vendor specifies exactly what each element of the package will cost you. What we've had the problem with is we get a price. The problem we had is we get a price, it's all bundled together. We'll sell you this package for X. Well, then we get students calling up and saying, well, you know, I just saw that same computer being advertised for, you know, $18.99. Why should I buy it off of you guys? And if you can't go back and say, oh, well, actually, the vendor is selling us the computer for $17.99, everything else is X, Y, and Z, then you're in a hard place. Then you don't really have a lot to negotiate with when the price does fall. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, that pretty well covers that.
Yeah.
Okay, another thing that you have to do, or at least give the convincing illusion of doing when you're going through the, that's very Machiavellian, I guess, when you're going through the model selection process and determining what your option one box is going to be is accepting input from your existing law school community. Now, there are a couple of reasons why you might not want to do that. Because every year as the specs go up on the machine and the computer of this year outstrips the computer of last year in capability, there's always this sort of resentment. Well, you held back that technology from us last year.
Yes.
Well, it didn't exist. But it's a good idea to put out samples of the machine in a place where people can get to them and play with them.
And that is another thing. When you are doing the bidding, that's one of the things you should absolutely insist on, is one model of everything that they're bidding on. We had a Compaq, a Dell, and an IBM that were among the models we had to choose from this year, and we insisted that we want one of each of them. And we had them in our library for about 2 weeks. And, okay, people just come on down and look at them, play with them, see what you think.
And, I mean, sometimes the input can be valuable, but just as much as that, it's, you know, there's a certain degree of goodwill in having done so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, one of the things we do, and this is just, you know, one of the issues surrounding it since we had to frame this in terms of pitfalls, is we've discovered that when you're dealing with this many of anything, you know, classes with 150 plus laptops, and you're putting students in a position where they're becoming very reliant upon them, it is terribly important to have loaner computers available that they can pretty much take out when their box goes into service. And in fact, one of the cost factors in the option 1 PC is the purchase price of a small bunch of loaners every year. So in fact, I believe we've got a deal where every student pays $50.
Yeah, $25.
$25, and that gives us 5 loaners sort of in the purchase. It's a good idea when in doing that, that the loaner not just be the PC, but all the other components of the package, you know, the Ethernet card, the case, the modem, the software, and everything, so that you really have a lendable unit.
And one of the things that we will be doing next year, because again, this goes back to our basic philosophy. Your laptop, we're requiring you to have a laptop because we expect you to have that laptop with you every day in class. One of the things we're going to be doing to steer people away from option 2 and into option 1 is, since the cost of the loaners is built into the option 1 program, only option 1 students will be eligible for a loaner. Option 2 students can have a loaner if it's an absolute emergency. But if your computer is going to your vendor for warranty service and it's going to be gone for 2 or 3 days, well, that's the chance you take when you're an option 2 person.
Okay, this one goes to the handout that has my name on it.
Yep. Tips for option 2 buyers.
We've seen our share of series Cheeseball laptops that were at least technically compliant to the standards we create for option 2 come through and then had to configure them. And they're always kind of weird. Like, for example, last year's machine had the slight disadvantage of an external floppy drive rather than swappable bays for floppy and CD, and which turned out to be not a problem. But the Cheeseball models almost invariably, these are the ones that cost about $1,300, and they're probably about a penny of $800, and they've got everything on board. I call them circus wagons. But they've got crappy components, bad video cards, funny BIOSes. They have PCMCIA slots, but when you try to get a PCMCIA device in that slot, to work and get recognized, you wonder whether something's not connected. They typically have manufacturer names that you never heard of that usually have 3 initial letters.
But they're not IBM.
XYZ, or,
Yeah.
MBI or something like that, or Dave's.
Yeah.
You have to do whatever you can if you're going to have an option to deter people from using these, because we've had situations where somebody literally bought one from the Daymark catalog. We could not make it talk to the network in a satisfactory fashion, and they had to go and get another computer. It's only happened twice, and we hate when it happens, but it can happen.
Well, don't do this. Yeah, I want to say something. Yeah, Paul, I mean, this is a great letter that Paul sent out. This is the first year we did this letter, and it has helped remarkably. And I know it's helped remarkably because of the quality of the questions we're getting from people who are considering option 2. One of the things I think this letter points out is the reason for going option 2 is because you want something bigger and badder than what we're offering. Option 2 is not a time to go bargain hunting. Yes, you may think you're getting a great bargain by getting yourself this $1,300 computer, but if it's going to be in Paul's office, if it's going to be in Kim Weiss's, getting repaired more than it's in your hands, then it's not a bargain. And Paul, I mean, we talk about this, but we name names. Here are computer vendors. These are manufacturers that we think don't work well with our network. Here are some people that you might want to consider. This letter has been enormously helpful.
Okay, this again is a little bit redundant, but we talked already, I think, and we're kind of probably time's limiting and we're getting behind. Just the reason why we have an option 2, again, is mainly to accommodate people who either have special computer wishes or already have a computer. And if you get into a situation, I think, where you don't let people do their own, that's the kind of situation where you might lose students who might otherwise decide not to come.
The option 2 is definitely the concession to the admissions people. If we were going to tell people you have to buy a computer and it has to be this one, they would have hissy fits all over the place because that would be driving students away from our lovely school. And so this little handout thing, the little postcard, and we make it as easy as possible for the students. It is a postage-paid postcard. All they have to do is check off their option 1 or option 2. We even, and this is at the request of admissions, by the way, we modified the card to help them out because we also now have a line, I've decided not to attend the University of Richmond School of Law because it really helps them weed out their numbers a lot quicker than they were able to do so in the past. And all they do is they get their name, their phone number, if they're option 1 or option 2, and plop this baby in the mail. And all of this goes out to them beginning in March. The tips for option 2 buyers, what constitutes the option 1 package, and the other handout, what you need to do if you're going to be option 2.
Okay, this is like a rather peculiar local variation that you may or may not run into, but because our vendor's local, sometimes people want to do what's called an option 1 enhanced kind of deal. They don't want to go with a different model. They're perfectly satisfied with both the financial aid provisions coming from buying option 1 and the basic box that option 1 is, but they want a little more. So they try to cut a deal with the vendor to pay, an extra amount up front to maybe get the next model up, or a different hard drive, or the active matrix version, or something like that, to sort of get the best of both worlds, and call it something like option 1 enhanced. And administratively, it's been really troublesome to us because these things have a way of not being ready until like the day before, getting configured at the 11th hour, and
getting the wrong computer to the wrong person.
Yeah, any number of just administrative nightmares. Mm-hmm. I would recommend that if these kinds of situations are a possibility in your laptop program, that you make people either be option 1 or be option 2, in which case they ship the box. They're responsible for getting the box to you in July for you to configure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Almost self-explanatory.
Yeah. like I said, no good deed goes unpunished. The person that you agree, yeah, you can send your option 2 computer in 2 weeks before school starts, invariably will be the computer from hell that you cannot configure no matter how much you work on it.
This year I'm resolved to do the option 2s before I even do the gold disc for the option 1. And that way maybe I won't be having to get up at 4 in the morning on the first day of orientation to finish off those last couple of boxes.
Yeah, this is really important. In our mandatory laptop program, we're really focused on first years because, first years coming in get the computers, right? Well, wrong. There are other people who show up at your school for the first time in August, the visitors and the transfer students. And you have to have a policy set in place that admissions knows about and will agree to uphold on how these people will be dealt with. At our school, the decision has been made that transfer students are ours. Therefore, they have to follow the mandatory laptop program.
Those are the ones that arrive as 2Ls.
They're the ones who arrive as 2Ls, but they're going to be part of the mandatory program. Visitors, however, are not required to purchase a computer.
Those are the 3Ls.
Those are the 3Ls. And make it very clear to your visitors that they are not required to purchase a computer, and we are not going to say that they are. This past year, we had a visitor try to talk our director of admissions into sending a letter to his lender saying that he was required to buy a PC so he could borrow $3,000 more than his limit. And she flatly refused to do it. Then he came to see us. Well, will you write that letter? And I said, no, we're not going to write any letter because you don't have to have one. So you have to have this in place ahead of time.
I get a feeling that maybe this is a very, very University of Richmond issue, that because, our admissions department's like Lady Liberty for transfer students.
Yeah, well.
Retired and poor.
You mean embodied.
This is something, as you institute your program, this is a mistake we did make. The network was new as well as the laptop program, and I suspect that's probably not the case for any of you, and so this is probably moot, but we didn't roll all the 2Ls and 3Ls into having network logins and email accounts and other kinds of access to a growing bunch of internet and network resources we had as a thing, and so that, I think, in many ways kind of slowed the network culture as it came to exist. Like I say, that may be more of a 1994-ish pitfall. It doesn't really come up because I suspect everybody pretty much gets logins nowadays.
Yeah, think about this. We hand out on the first day of school about 150 laptops, plus printers, plus carrying cases. Think of all the boxes, because these things are all boxed because our vendor will not deliver them until the day of distribution for security reasons. The first year we did our laptop distribution, we had me and my husband and my then 4-year-old daughter behind the reference desk, hauling boxes off the loading dock, throwing them over to Paul, the director of the library, and our then network administrator, who was throwing them at students. You remember that? It was a nightmare. It was just really bizarre. Since that time, our vendor, and it's written into the contract, he has to do this. He practically shuts down his office, and he brings his entire staff to our law school. And he and his staff hand out computers, and we stand there and say, yes, you need to go there. Yes, you need to go there. It is much better. It is much better.
I still remember from that first year, I was dealing with doling out the option 2s that were configured. And these are talking about people who have just graduated. And one of the option 2 people bought a brand new AT&T Pentium 70 laptop for $6,000.
Yeah.
And that was the one that I gave to Cheryl by mistake.
Yes.
I got 2 students' laptops mixed up, and Cheryl went off with this $6,000 PC. But I'm happy to tell you that those 2 are now married. But I'm kidding. They aren't.
They're not.
They became good friends.
They became very good friends because he opened up his box and that was another $6,000 laptop in there. Now you do have to have, and what we're going to actually do this year, and this is even better than what we've been doing. We've been trucking people into the library and having them line up A through G, M through whatever. Next year, they will go into a classroom and they will sit down at a seat that has their name on it. And their computer is going to be there, everything's going to be there, and we will unbox everything and have them check off. And that's another thing. We didn't put this in the pitfall. We should have. I just thought of this. You have to have a punch list of what they are receiving. Yes, I got my computer. Yes, I got the power cord for my computer. Yes, I got my Ethernet adapter. Because if you don't, what will happen is in March, someone will walk up to you and say, oh, honestly, I just opened up my computer and, my power cord wasn't there. I need a power cord. We actually had that happen. We had people coming in November and March claiming they never got a power cord. So now they have everything listed out. Yes, I got my printer. Yes, I got my printer cable. Yes, I got my printer power cord. Yes, I got this. Yes, I got that. They have to fill all that out, sign it, and hand it back in. And we do it in triplicate. So they get a copy, the vendor gets a copy, we get a copy. Yeah. Because we're anal. Because it's just we need to start orientation right off the bat that day.
Right, it's just the beginning of a 2-day computer orientation.
It's the beginning of a 2-day computer orientation, and it just works much better to have the vendor come to our place and handle all 150 people in sight rather than have them go someplace and then have them come back.
By the way, there's another one I think we left off the pitfalls. When you have that many, the odds are overwhelmingly that there will be PCs that are dead on arrival.
Oh, yeah.
And so your vendor has to provide, I'd say with 150 enrollment, a good half a dozen replacement machines that are just given to the student the first time if they hit that power switch and a Windows 95 screen doesn't come up. Yeah. That's axiomatic.
Yeah, that is part of our orientation, is having students go through, light up the box, test the printer, make sure, because like Paul said, a certain number of the printers will be DOA, a certain number of the computers are going to be DOA, and the ones that are DOA out of the box, it's just better for everybody if the vendor just replaces them rather than trying to say, oh no, you have to go through warranty service on that. Oh yeah, the contract.
I sort of did this before.
Let's show them the contract. And also, the contract, one of our handouts, the contract we use with our students. What did we do that?
We're not a party.
We are not a party. And it states that real clearly in several places in this contract. And we tell the students they have to read, it's like their first introduction to law school, constructive notice. Yeah. You've seen it. You should read it. If you don't read it, you don't belong in law school. Now sign it and give it back to us.
And it's really lengthy and in short. Yeah, and in very, very small print.
It's 9 points.
It's like the bailment contract in law school for the ferry boat where the boat sinks, and the plea was, well, if I'd have read the contract, I would have missed the boat.
Yeah, well. And, yeah. One of the things that the contract also makes very clear, and I guess every law school has this problem, not just us. I think even, the really good schools have this problem. You're going to have a certain number of people who, after the first day of school, say, oh my God, what am I doing here? And they want to leave. And they don't want to have to pay $3,226 for a computer. Then you have the people who decide in October, I don't like this anymore. You have the people who decide in December. You have the people who come back in January, see their grades from the first semester, and say, no, I don't think so. You have to decide what their obligations are going to be. And it has to be spelled out very clearly in the contract. And again, admissions hates us for doing this because there we are on the very first day of school telling people what happens if they decide to drop out in 2 weeks. But you need to let the students know what their obligation is vis-a-vis their computer if they decide to drop out in 2 weeks.
I guess this one's fairly self-evident, but you have to, and this gets a little bit beyond our scope in some ways, except maybe to allude to it, is but you have to have enough program and make it clear as to what it is, because there are going to be some skeptics, especially those who are not very computer experienced or maybe even computer phobic. You know, and we had one this year who raised his hand during the sort of one of the more solemn parts of the admissions day and said, you know, "What's this for?" You know.
Yeah. We sort of just like that too. But no, what I was also going to say is, Paul and I sort of fought over the wording of this one, and since we control the technology, and it's not just what they will do, but also how they will do. I mean, I've been hearing for the last 15 years about how computer literate the coming generation of students are, and I ain't seen it yet. I mean, yeah, we had one guy in this past first year entering class who was a network administrator at some other place, and what did he want to set up? He wanted to set up a Unix server in his Carol.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had, what's this floor guy, who I was in his orientation session, because we run a very intensive 2-day orientation on how to use your computer. Hey, I can't get on this network. It ain't working. Well, let me see. Yes, he ain't working. Well, let me see how you log in. Didn't log in. Well, let's try it one more time. Wait a second. Isn't your name spelled B-R-A-N-D-T? Yeah. Well, you keep typing in B-R-A-N-T-D. And the guy's mistyping his own name consistently a half a dozen times. You have people like that in your law schools. They can't type. They think because they know how to word process, they know how to do computers. Well, they don't. And a lot of them can't seem to make the leap. I mean, WordPerfect and Word are so similar, but they can't see it. And you're going to have those people in there. They've used email, but not your email package. Oh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. You have to have a program to show these people. And that was also the next pitfall.
Yeah, they've drunk Pepsi. You have to teach them how to drink Coke.
Yeah. You have to do some basic orientation. We really did overload the students the first year. We were giving them basic this and that and the other. We have come to the conclusion that really all you need to teach them how to do is send email, send attachments with email, and basic, okay, you don't use Word, we use WordPerfect, here's how you open up a WordPerfect document, here's how you save it.
Training, that's Kim Wiseman.
Yeah, right there. Stand up, Kim.
Extraordinary.
Stand up, Kim.
And who did these slides?
Yes. Yeah, because really that is another thing that is not a pitfall, but it's something we realized pretty early on is you need a Kim in your organization. Paul is a great techie person. I'm an administrator. I have nothing to do with most of this, thank God. But you need someone who is a good software trainer. Someone who can sit there and not get annoyed over people who keep hitting the wrong keys over and over and over again. And Kim fulfills that rule very nicely for us.
You internalize it.
You internalize it so well. Yeah, again, this is what we just said. Don't over-program your orientations like we did. Just give them what they need. And what they really need is they need email, and they need to know how to do attachments to email, how to download attachments, how to attach attachments, all that kind of stuff.
I can't say as I've ever taught a student how to browse the web.
No. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is one.
This is a real pitfall.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one where it might just be us, but I suspect not, is that you have to identify whether you're a library-oriented computer apparatus, as we are, a separate office who's doing that. It's important that you be the ones with the information and the support, and that it be good, because for a couple of reasons you don't want them going up to the dean's office. The obvious one I don't have to mention is you don't really want to deal with those people. You don't want them mad at you. And the other one is that they're not liable to know that much about the program, so you really have to identify your office as the place to go with both questions and complaints. We have discovered that the dean's office tends to overreact very badly to students coming up with any kind of complaint. And you want to short-circuit that. You want to let people know right from the beginning that the dean's office cannot help them
and only you can help them. Yeah.
This is one of yours.
Yes, this is another one of mine. This is a pitfall that I think almost happened to us. It's one we didn't quite fall into, but almost did. After you've done this 1 year, it's like, oh my God, we can do this thing. We've got this sucker nailed. Well, you don't, because there are always enough changes every year that if you don't keep changing your program, I mean, our program this year is a lot different than our program was in '94. And that's as it should be. It has to keep evolving, because if you try to keep doing the same things over and over, it's going to fail eventually on you.
Yeah, this time I think we made a transition from NetWare-based mail addresses to POP3, and a lot of the staff people involved in the basic orientation had never seen POP3 or done it themselves.
And we were freaking out.
And somebody didn't explain it very well to them.
No, somebody didn't explain it to them very well,
And so
Paul.
we had a lot of very bad first-day configurations, and that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
You have to really review, and when you do things, keep your staff with you. But I'm not an administrator, so it's okay. What's that?
Okay, that is one of the things you have to do, is you really do have to ask the students what they think. And I personally am not one for asking students what they think, because quite frankly, it's just an invitation for whining. I mean, all they'll do is whine and whine and whine about how stupid you are, and how stupid this thing is, and how much they hate the school, and blah, 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 blah. So what you have to do is you have to ask really good questions, which will short-circuit the whining. You don't let the questionnaire become a gripe session. You ask very specific questions about, we asked a question like, what did you think of our training program? Oh, it was awful. It was terrible. Blah, blah, blah. This year we asked, not just what did you think of our training program, but we listed every single training session we held and said, and which of these sessions did you attend, and which of the sessions did you find most helpful? Well, guess what? Most people don't attend the training sessions. So by asking the specific question, which programs did you attend and what did you find helpful or not very helpful about these sessions, yielded a much better response than what did you think of our training. So you have to ask very specific questions when you're dealing with students.
Oh, this is one of my favorites here. We enlist student help.
Oh, yeah.
And this has gotten better and better and better as time went on. There are a couple of different pitfalls, and it's a real management issue. And this is Kim's bailiwick, and she's much better at it than I ever was. On the one hand, you get students who just see it, they're marginally capable computer users who need more time to study. On the one hand, which is what we were having as a problem before. But then the other thing that can happen is there are either people who have unjust or unjustified confidence in their skills who can really lead them astray at best, or they are seething empire builders who are seeing this as the first step to taking over your network. Oh, can I help delete these notice board postings? They're getting kind of old, and there are a lot of them there. I'll need a supervisory equivalent to do that. And all of a sudden, you find out you're running a different network platform with different days. So, where's my
Paul has a matrix that he defines for all computer users. You are high ambition, low ambition, high skill, low skill. People like me who are low ambition, low skill are no threat to anybody. People who are high ambition and high skill can be very, very useful to you. However, there are people, go ahead, who are high ambition and low skill. They are dangerous. This is one of our student assistants, computer student assistants, and Paul and I have been debating. We didn't hire him. The person who did hire him is no longer with us, was Kim's predecessor. And in our off moments, we debate, did David hire this guy, A, because he knew he was quitting very soon and he wanted to leave something that would really bug me and Paul, or B, did he quit because he knew we were about to kill him for hiring this guy? We can't really make up our minds. But yeah, you really do need to screen your students. Okay, we want to thank you for your time and attention. If there are any other questions, we're willing to hang around.